Good afternoon. It is 5 p.m. exactly. It is Thursday, May 22nd, right? Yeah. So this is my second follow-up video. And earlier today, I've been working on my project narrating, and I'm going to be making a couple more videos, narrating some more scripts, and then adding and editing and stuff like that. So, I was thinking today about, I had mentioned before, I don't know if it was today or a few days ago. I might have mentioned it like, both days, I don't know. But I was talking about looking for or creating a website, for, job searches. Yeah, job searches. Instead of like, we've had like LinkedIn in the past and stuff where, people have multiple accounts. And, I'm thinking, okay, I had mentioned, looking for work based on your hobbies, okay, or their outside interest, okay. Um, like, for example, if I work in accounting or work in like an office environment, I like different things. So like if there was a yarn company, or if there was like a arts and crafts company that was like a manufacturer out here or whatever, then that would be kind of fun for me because I'm around these sort of odd items. When extra type activities occur, like I don't know if, even know if parties, people have company parties anymore. I mean, it's become so distant and weird in the last few years because of, I believe it had a lot to do with some weird competition that was kind of going on around, um, you know, the country. Like and don't get me wrong, I'm not a big company party person either, and they'll tell you why I don't like company parties, because I've been a Target all my life. That's why. So it's like I get to sit here and talk and mingle with people that I really fucking hate. Basically, is how that works. But anyway, but seriously though, in a normal type environment, I would say, certain gatherings are appropriate. You know what I mean? Like, for example, milestones in companies and stuff like that. It makes sense that people would note it somehow. And typically, I think it's better to have these sort of events outside of work. And I'm using this as an example, okay? So, like, let's just say, for example, I'm somebody who's enthusiastic about, like I said, arts and crafts or dolls or makeup, okay? And so, I work for a company that produces these things, okay? If you go to, like, certain events, you're more likely to be more engaged in the company environment, more than you would be if I was assigned to work in like a, plumbing company, or, something like that. You know what I mean? Because I don't really have an interest in the industry. Now, there's been times where I've had jobs where I was in the industry and I still may do. I mean, it didn't affect me that much. Like, I actually liked working at Edwards Air Force Base before, like, certain people would start piping up too much with their stupid harassment. But I liked it, because it was just methodical. Like, I knew what I was going to do. I had one assignment and I would just keep moving on to the next one, right? So, but what I didn't like, I didn't really like the environment. Like, I know when I would go to lunch break, or I would be out, there was very limited shopping because it was on a military base, okay? And Maria is vibrant. She loves, color. She loves all that sort of stuff. And when you're there, everything's like camouflage color, and just, it's a nightmare, okay? Like, it's a real nightmare to be there for like 8 hours for a long period of time when you are a certain personality. But because, I was in my little office space, it didn't, or my little cubicle at the time, it didn't really bother me out that much until I went outside and I realized, my free time was even like, around things I didn't really like. So ideally, you can't always have the perfect job. There's times where, it may not be in the greatest location. It might be, in one part of the town. And, there's so many things that go into it. Like, it's nice to have a job that's close by. Okay. It's nice to have, a job where, you have your own office space. It's you have these lists. Okay. But sometimes you get a job where it doesn't have everything. Okay. But one thing, I really am tired of compromising or saying, oh, it's okay, I can get by without that, is I cannot deal with a shitty in work environment. Okay, I can deal with pretty much anything, but I cannot deal with, people like Rex Laverne and that sort of stuff. And I don't ever want to have to deal with that again. So, but yeah, I have been thinking about that. I've been thinking, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to get back into life. I need to work. I'm not going to sit here and rely on anybody. I'm going to be talking about this in more in my videos, my upcoming videos, about accountability. And, I talked about, today's video, I was talking about boundaries, okay? And I was talking about material boundaries. And, like, for example, my son, okay? Now, it's been set up before where my son was to take care of me. And I think my son is, you know, very sweet and very kind, and I do appreciate it. Okay. But the thing is that, you know, I'm aware that everybody has their own self-interest. Everybody has their own desire, right? Like I'm sure when he was younger, he wasn't sitting around thinking, yeah, dude, it's gonna be so cool taking care of my mom. No one thinks that, right? So I mean, I've always wanted my son to do the things that he wanted to do. Like I had the shittiest life. I can't even tell you how shitty it was. All because of people like, you know, Rex Laverne, you know, covert racists, Nazis, and everything else. Okay, so I know what it's like to feel unfulfilled, to be unfulfilled. You know what I mean? To year after year hoping things are going to get better, and you're right back smack dab in the, you know, the hell that you were before, and all that stuff. So I don't really want my son to have to deal with that, and I never wanted him to deal with that, and I never really wanted to share anything that related to my work with my son. You know why? Because I always wanted to come off as bubbly and happy, like everything was great. Okay. And he knew I was always in a bad mood when I would come home, but I was in a bad mood because I had to deal with work and I was always socialized. Like, I never meant for it to be that way, but you know, I just wanted to spare my son of all that sort of drama. Really, I did. That's the idea, I think, of every parent. If you knew what it was like to be miserable, you do not want to have your offspring be miserable. You want life to be better for them. That is the goal of, that should be the goal of every parent, right? So no, I mean, I never wanted my son to take care of me, but also, you know, I do appreciate it though. But but I also, you know, I have all kinds of things that I want to do before I am exiting off this planet. And so since I am deciding that this is my last time, you know, I figure I'm just going to throw myself into whatever, you know what I mean? Like I was just thinking about this whole software idea about, you know, maybe I can contact some software companies because I can give them the idea and that they could build their company around the idea or whatever, and I can just work there. You know what I mean? I'm trying to figure out whatever, anything that just stimulates my mind. I'm very highly energetic, okay, and I'm constantly thinking. I constantly think of ideas, or I see the interconnection of two things, like, you know, psychology, law, bring them together and create this to talk to people about their behavior and the consequences of it. Because, you know, I would say this whole situation, you know, made me want to talk about this and assist other people in their behavior. Because really, it's not me being, you know, I don't think I'm stepping out of line for mentioning this. It's just that it needs to be corrected, and I see how big it is, right? Anyway, so I was thinking about a little bit about the platform, okay, and you know, I'm trying to figure out different ways to approach employers. Like, I do know that I have a secret soul tribe, okay, and sometimes my soul tribe looks for work for me, and here I'm just only going to say this. I'm not going to ask any questions, okay? If this is something that you're already doing, or something's already in the works, that's fine, okay? But I'm always keeping my bases covered. So whatever happens first, whether I get your job first or I find something, whatever, I just want to make sure that I'm always prepared. And this is something that I think everybody should be this way. It's not a good idea to ever rely on anyone. Okay, I know people have talked about me being strong, and they've even tried to come off like it's a bad thing. They would try to, they seriously try to, like, they will throw anything in your face, right? I am not ashamed to be strong, okay? Because when you are somebody who is, what do you call it, self-sufficient, okay, you are not being a burden to anyone else. Okay, I was talking, I think I mentioned it briefly about codependency. Codependency is when you have somebody in your life who is, and you end up sacrificing things, okay? Sacrificing your happiness, your well being for their behalf, okay? For their behalf, right? At your expense. Now, I understand there's times where you're compassionate and you want to help, okay? Like my son's helping me, and I appreciate it, right? But I'm an able bodied woman. Okay, and I do know that I've been blacklisted and I had to deal with all this, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to untangle this, okay? I mean, you fucked my life over, you will not fuck my kids over, okay? You're just not going to do it. So I had to untangle all of this, okay? And I was almost driven myself mad trying to figure it all out, and it's been hell on me, okay? I mean, it's been real bad for me. So I'm, you know, I am an able-bodied person, and I'm willing to work. You know what I mean? I want to work. Okay, I get really agitated when I don't have anything to do. So, I was thinking about the software idea and how it would look and how it would, I don't know, what do you call it? The back end of it. How does this work and how does it interconnect? And I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I would like to talk and pitch this idea to people who are serious about this. Okay. Because I will tell you, there are certain websites that just are not working for people. There's not like, like LinkedIn with their multiple fake accounts, people getting shadow banned and this sort of stuff. It's not working. So something else needs to work. And we need to be able to prevent this sort of attack happening again. How can it be safe from fraudulent posts, ghost postings? How can it be protected? We have to think about, how we could prevent what happened to all of this to happening on these sort of platforms. Okay. And how is it that we can make it better, easier, more enjoyable? Yes. Okay. I'm going to say enjoyable because, I think we've suffered on the earth long enough. Okay. I really do think we've suffered on the earth long enough. That's everything down from the minute we wake up to the time we go to bed. Right. And then they have the nerve to make looking for a job a nightmare by, putting things like, ghost ads and stuff like that to make even more of a burden on our lives. Okay. And, I'm trying to figure out ways how these things can be eliminated. They need to be eliminated. Okay. So that's one option. Okay. And then, of course, I could do regular general office work. I'm also interested in, moving a company forward with my ideas, meaning like, okay, we're going to rearrange the office. We're going to change the culture of it. Yes, I am somebody who's constantly thinking about how to make businesses better. And unfortunately, I believe that the Lavernes understood this, and this is one of the reasons why they hated me so much. They were so desperate to prove me wrong. They were so desperate. Every single time they had a chance, they would sit there and do all kinds of stuff to throw things in my way, to try to, question me, be in my way. Now, this is a form of harassment that has obviously affected me. Okay, because the bullying can only go so far. Okay, and these people literally pushed me to the edge to where I am now. Okay, and this is like 12 years so on after the Murray Family Farms thing. And I know that, I was talking about certain people who want to take it, just get it, whatever they want, they just want to grab it and they want to take it, and, I was talking about the white supremacist groups and stuff. And yes, there's all peace. I'm not creating this, or trying to stir up trouble with white supremacists, but I'm just saying is just that this was Rex mentality. Okay, that he, or maybe he didn't even consider it at all. Like I was such like, in his mind, I was just like an inanimate object that he could just, take advantage of, and act as if I didn't have any responsibilities to myself or anything else. He was just an evil person. But do I believe that he had malicious intent? I do. But because of the fact that so many other people are blacklisted, this is something that he orchestrated. He was, and him and his wife were like hardcore bullying people and trying to shape the world into what their idea was. Okay. And, they believed that they were superior and that they had a certain idea as to how people should live. And that's fine if they want to live that way. Okay. They can go ahead and live that way, but they were forcing this on other people and they were manipulating things like employment, credit, and all this other stuff. So let this be a wake-up call to certain unprofessional companies. Like I said, I'm unhappy that there are certain companies that were collaborating with these people in the manner that they were. Okay. And especially doing it in the name of religion. Okay. This is a wake-up call. And it's like, there are certain companies that can be reported, like things like, Glassdoor, stuff like that. Not just things about relating to negative employment. We need to talk about companies that participate in human trafficking. We need to talk about these sort of things. And I think this is one of the reasons why, they had this big, what do you want to call it? Boycott. I mean, yeah, it seems like it's about DEI. It seems like it's about all these sort of things, right? But why is this? It's about enslaving people. This is the original purpose of it, okay? Whether we want to believe it or not, okay? And so it's like, okay, we can... And I understand, it seems as though I haven't read anything new about the thing. So, what do you call it? The boycott. And I really haven't been up on the news, okay? I'm trying to maintain a positive attitude. I'm already dealing with a lot of, depression and loss of faith in mankind and anything else, anything negative that you can possibly think of. I don't really want to be too much aware of what's going on in the news. And I know that there was, boycotts last month. and I don't know. I'm not sure if they're still going on or not. I'm not even paying attention to that, you know? And some people will say, man, you really stay out of stuff, Maria. Yeah, I pretty much do stay out of stuff because, like I said, you know, I'll think and think and think and think and think, which is not necessarily a bad idea, right? But right now, my main focus is on human trafficking. That's my biggest issue. And, you know, trying to make things better for people now, and then, of course, making it even more streamlined in the future. So these are some of my ideas. And, you know, it would be cool if, because I don't have any technical skills. I don't, okay, but I have an idea of how this whole thing would work. So it's like I'm willing to do that too. I want to do, you know, great work, you know, before the end of my life, and I'm still able to work, and this is what I want to do. So you know, like I said, you know, I think when people take the initiative to be responsible for their own life, this is my principle. This is my principle. Okay. This is how I choose to live my life. And, you know, when you get in these relationships of codependency, you know, where, you know, let's just say, for example, I was loving my son, you know, just taking care of me. Right. What if he resented me? What if he wanted to go find a wife? What if he wanted to go out and go and live in some other state or whatever, you know? That would just make it so that, you know, I would feel very bad about that, you know, because that's never been my dream for him to throw his life away. And I'm sure he wouldn't see it that way, right? But at the same time, you know, that's just something that would hurt me to know that he didn't get to do the things he wanted to do, like I ended up. You know what I mean? And believe me, I'm very angry about that. You know what I mean? I'm very angry about that. So this is a very heartless. It was a very heartless, painful experiment. In, you know, I think about the mentality of people who got behind this sort of stuff, and it is very warped, very, very warped. And there's no way in the world I could ever believe that, you know, people like Joseph Mengele were like good-hearted about this sort of stuff, you know. But anyway, what else did I want to say? Okay, you know, when it comes to, like, you know, some of these websites or like looking for work, okay, I don't know, but I highly do suspect, okay, that, you know, I'm not the only person that the Lavernes have messed with, okay. I have an idea of who else they have messed with, but, like, you know, in terms of shutting people out, I do believe that they have instructed, you know, employers to not be as approachable. You know what I mean? Like, you know, don't answer this email, or block this person, and don't answer the phone, or this sort of stuff. This needs to stop, okay? Because you know what they're doing? It's an easy way for them to orchestrate their genocide plan. Okay, and so really, and I understand, you know, not everybody can reach their phone and everything, but do I suspect that this is some sort of organized plan on purpose? Like I said, it's one thing if companies are busy and they let their voicemails, you know, pile up or whatever, they're not returning them. But when they have specific people that they have been instructed not to communicate with for reasons of human trafficking, then that's a problem. So it really should be where employers are more approachable, especially since so many people have been affected by human trafficking. Human resource individuals should be doing their job, and they should be approachable, like, or a talent acquisitions or whoever, you know, receive resumes and stuff like that. And I feel as though, you know, you never know, because this whole thing was such a big operation that the doors that they were shutting, okay, they need to be reopened again. Now, like I said, I understand some people don't answer their phones. Not everybody gets to their email right away. I personally think professionally it makes sense to make sure that you respond to all of your emails and all of your phone calls, okay, because that's a part of your job, okay. And I understand a lot of people, and this is another thing I'm talking about. You know, I'm talking about better workplaces. There's a lot of people who I know are not happy with their jobs. So these are the kind of people who let these, you know, their voicemails pile up. These are the people that don't return their calls, okay? Because maybe they're just burnt out. That's not the kind of work they want to do. It is what it is. I do believe that a lot of people are in mismatched positions. I truly do believe this. And a part of it is, I think a large part of it is because of human trafficking. You know, because people are being prevented from making the right choice instead of, like, you know. And sometimes I do believe, like in my situation, do I believe certain jobs were given to me as a form of punishment, like, get into this environment, that way you won't be this way. This is the sort of stuff that I'm talking about. Okay, so we're talking about work-life balance. Work-life balance will never happen, never happen if that's the case. Because like I said, if you put me in an environment, because I have been in environments like this, okay, like where I hated my job, I hated the commute there, I hated the people there, right? And then I would get home, and then there was no balance, because while I was at home and could enjoy my arts and crafts or relaxation, music or whatever, I'm too busy stewing over the bullshit that occurred at work. So there is no work life balance in that situation. So things need to change. They need to change. Okay. And this is really getting down to the root of it. It's important that, these sort of companies, if they're constantly, truly always looking for new people, new ideas, new whatever personnel, or they're always trying to keep resumes on file. And I understand this whole thing with Indeed.com. I mean, I'm acknowledging the improvements that Indeed.com has made. I'm totally acknowledging it. Okay. But I'm saying is we have ghost postings. Okay. And this is a problem. And I do believe this over saturation of ghost postings, as well as possibly being instructed to keep certain people out. Maybe I'm going to refer to this as a blacklist or whatever, some sort of agreement that might be a part of a religious or a political, i.e., racist, Nazi, white nationalist type of organization, possibly, okay? Because we know that this is like Rex Laverne's little thing that he had in place. So I'm just letting people know, okay? Because we need to look at all the nooks and crannies as to where all of these problems are, in every little area, okay? So we have the issue of ghost postings, and we also have the possibility of people being instructed to not, perform their jobs completely. Because that really would be a part of their job. It would be. Okay, but they don't seem to be doing it, right? Okay, well then, like I said, we have problems with people who are mismatched in their jobs, as well as taking instructions from outside influencers. So the workplace needs to be reformed in many ways. What else do I want to say? Okay, I did get the message that my rights are respected. Thank you. Like I said yesterday, I think this all message came to me yesterday, and I'm thinking, okay, well, after 2025, it's like about time. This should have never happened in the first place, and yeah, I am angry that somebody thought it was okay to even mess with my life that way. You know what I mean? And so people actually thought that this was normal, like, oh, Rex Laverne must be her business manager or something, or did anybody even think about those sort of things? They're not anything to me. They're my past employer. That's about it. It's like, God, how could you think that, right? No, an employer only has so much right. Okay. And like I said, if like, for example, my son's last employer, if he felt as though, what people purchased or I purchased or my son purchases or anybody who thinks it's okay to sit there and like penalize people for spending their own money that they paid for because that's their employee, well then you need to pay me overtime because when I purchased that item I wasn't clocked in. Okay, so that means you look at me as your 24-hour a day employee. Well, you need to cough up the compensation because that's what it would be like, right? But that's not the case. Right? So we know that this is bullshit. All right? No employer has the right to sit there and do that. If they do that to you, it is very much like the good old days of debt bondage and that sort of stuff. Okay? You get your compensation and it's your money. It's your pay. You paid. It's your pay. Now, he was doing this because of religious or racial reasons. There's no reason for somebody to do that. And I do not appreciate, people communicating and telling me what my purchase history. And this includes, companies that are online. And do I believe that my online purchases could have been compromised and exposed to people? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. Okay. So we need to be able to decide what companies you want to buy from and which ones you don't. Okay. If you ever feel compromised by a company, do not buy from them again. Okay. And that is the way it is. I mean, when I mean by compromise, it's like my information is private. Okay. When I purchase something, it should be private. It is not for open. It's not open for review. Just like I mentioned, like, well, my sister used to work at Music Plus. If she was to disclose what a customer bought, she would lose her job. Now, like, really, when I used to rent videos, I would rent things like, documentaries, whatever. Okay. But like, what if a dude went in, right, and he rented a porn movie? Now he's over the age of 18 and he's allowed to rent that porn movie, but we also know that those sort of things, even though it's common for a lot of people to look at them, they do have their social ramifications, right? He could actually receive a bad reputation for doing that, right? So somebody's disclosing that information about them. Think about it. Okay, it is nobody's business what you purchase. So this is the way it is. If this is how people are going to conduct businesses, then I choose to not buy from them. It is what it is. You know what I mean? And because it's legal. I mean, I'm basically saying it's like, I have the right to have my privacy. I have the right to have my privacy. Okay, so I got the intuitive message that my credit will be cleared and I am in good standing, and I will be following up and checking on my credit report as soon as I can do that. Okay, and I am dead serious. These people owe me. You don't sit here and do that to another individual. You don't have the right to control my credit. You don't have the right to do any of those sort of things. Okay, the only thing the employer can do, the employer can do is verify my yearly income or how long I've been there. That's it. It's not, these people are unprofessional. Okay. And this is what I'm talking about. These people, it needs to flip around. They need to have people, if you can't handle confidentiality, which is, I'm sure that's a part of your job, then you don't need to be in there. When you do these things, what you do is you put people's lives in jeopardy. It is foolish, okay, to behave this way, to conduct a business this way, and it should not happen. Okay, and I understand people love their fun, okay, but they're loving their fun at the expense of other people, and this is wrong. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video, and I will be back with another video sometime later. Take care.